And that's time. So hopefully you had enough time to answer the 10 questions. That extra sheet, that blank sheet, is going to be a group sheet. So here is what I would like you to do next. We're now going to take 15 minutes as a group to go through the 10 questions. You'll need a recorder. You may not go back and change any of your individual answers, but you can refer to them, but you may not change them. Every table should have an extra sheet. I'd like you to discuss each question and work to come to consensus as to what the right answer is as you discuss it from a group perspective. No changing your individual answers from earlier. You have 15 minutes as a group now. What are the right answers? Consider this an experimentation in integration. We're going to give you a score. Actually, you're going to end up with 2 scores. You'll have your own individual score. Remember, I asked you not to go back and change your answer. So we're going to first have you score yourself, and then you have your group score. You had a recorder who kept track of your group's thinking around the responses to these 10 questions, given this very brief case that you had. So let's check your scores. So I want you to jot down your individual score and your group score. We can discuss it offline. Okay, now if this experiment in integration worked, what we hope happens is that the group result is higher than your individual result. Way higher. Okay. I appreciate the honesty. So let's look at how synergy is defined by the academics. Here at Synovate, we call it integration. The combined action of 2 or more agents that acting jointly increase effectiveness of one another and produce an outcome that is greater than the sum of their outcomes when acting independently. That's sort of the classic definition. When things are working well, when we're using our knowledge and our various perspectives, when working together, those combined actions should be greater than any individual action. So how is synergy achieved? Here's a bullet list for what lends itself to effective integration: listening to one another, sharing ideas and opinions, staying on topic, attending to managing the group process. I saw some management of group process going on. I saw hands raising. Those have been polling the audience or polling the group for what the correct answer was. Let's see, how many groups had, as a group, had 50% correct? 5 out of 10. Raise your hands. At least 5 out of 10. At least 5 out of 10. Okay. Put your hands down. 6 out of 10. At least 6 or more correct. Hands down. 7 or more. Hands up. Can we keep going higher? 8 or more? Hands down. This is exercise time. 9 or more? And finally, as a group, how many tables had all 10 correct? Wow, tremendous. What causes ineffective integration? When I've conducted this experiment, from observing groups, when the group work performs at a lower level than individual work, and I've seen that happen on several occasions, actually a number of occasions, there are 3 factors that contribute to that. One is ineffective leadership, especially where there's an autocratic leader who just isn't very bright. Honestly. The second scenario that I've seen that has led to poor integration is poor process. So not managing the process well, not drawing people out, not giving people an opportunity to air their ideas. So ineffective facilitation, if you will, of group process. And then the third scenario in which I've seen individuals perform better than the group is where there's an individual, and I confess that this happened to me as well when I went through a leadership development program. We had a much more elaborate case that we were working on that had correct answers. Afterwards, my individual performance was almost twice as more effective as the group performance. And later, when I got pulled aside by my coach, what I was told was that I failed to help the team because often I had the answer and I didn't influence the positive integration of the team. So another contributor is where the individual doesn't exert his or her influence when they have the answer. So those are the three contributors to positive integration. I want to build off of the last bullet point, group process, and transition into creativity. Because one of the things we know from our research is that groups, when they work effectively together in terms of creating creative solutions, if they're working effectively together, tend to be much more creative and imaginative than any single individual within the group. So we're going to look at what we mean by creativity, what I mean by creativity. And I'll share with you a few definitions. First of all, here's a formula. Creative solutions. And it struck me as I was preparing for this presentation, I was looking at the literature on Synovate, that client solutions emerge from a very similar kind of formula. This formula was created by a mathematician who was one of the founding faculty members of our department. And as a mathematician, she came up with this formula for creative solutions, or in this case, I would propose to Synovate that client solutions emerge from the same factors. So it's the integration, it's the effective integration of three ingredients: knowledge, imagination, and evaluation. So knowledge, you have to master your domain. You have to understand the fundamentals in your discipline in order to be effective. But you can't get trapped by the content of your discipline, or you get locked in the box, and that's where imagination comes in. In one of the Chatting About Business newsletter from Adrian, there was a comment about, if there's no obvious way, we'll invent it. That's what imagination is about. Stretching your thinking process, getting outside the box, coming up with a new way of approaching the situation. So it's knowledge, imagination, and the third ingredient is evaluation, which is good decision-making, critical thinking skills. So as you apply your imagination to look at various ways of going forward, are you effective at choosing the most effective or the most reasonable? So it's knowledge, imagination, and evaluation. Let me ask you a couple questions. Where are children in this formula in terms of integrating these three elements, knowledge, imagination, evaluation? Where are children naturally strong? Imagination. Where do children need help? Knowledge. That's why they go to school. And I heard some other folks whispering evaluation, learning right from wrong, learning good critical thinking skills. How about adults? Where are adults naturally strong? Knowledge. Masters of your domain. Where else? Evaluation, we hope, right? Good decision-making skills, critical thinking skills. Where do adults need some help? Imagination. Now, you notice your responses are opposites. So to be effective individually or as a team, and I would suggest it would be easier as a team, building on integration, is to find a way to balance these three elements: knowledge, imagination, and evaluation. This is repeated over and over again in the creativity literature. There's a factor that drives all of this, the A in the formula. A stands for attitude. If you're not motivated, if you don't have an open attitude about using these skills, then rather than realize potential, it's latent potential. So are you open to others' ideas? Are you willing to integrate your thinking with others? If you're not, then you're likely not to be successful as a team in coming up with creative solutions. So that's a formula. When I did my Ph.D., I came across this definition. This has stayed with me ever since. My favorite definition of creativity is the ability to modify self-imposed constraints. The ability to modify self-imposed constraints. The reason why I like this definition is that it focuses on the person. I do a lot of work with organizations, and I hear quite regularly, wow, the reason why I'm not creative, it's them. It's their fault. somebody else's fault. What this definition focuses on is our own locus of control, what we do to ourselves that prevents us from using our imagination, our knowledge, our critical thinking skills. A couple key points in the definition I want to point out. First is the word ability. When we say creativity is an ability, this is what's implied by that. All people are creative. Everyone sitting in this room has the ability to think in creative ways. But we vary in terms of how creative we are. We're not all Madame Curie's or Gandhi's or Martin Luther King's. We vary. But what we also know from our research is that whatever your level, your ability is with respect to creativity, can be enhanced. It can be developed. It can be nurtured. How many of you, we saw musicians earlier today, how many of you in here play musical instruments? Okay, good number. How many of you are involved in sports?